Hello and welcome to my playthrough, or sorry, my Let's Play of The Last of Us Part 1. Um, a few things I'd like to talk about before we actually get into the gameplay. Just some context for where we're at in the game right now. And I'm just going to summarize the game a little bit because we're not that far in, so it won't take me very long. Um, so essentially, um, Joel, the main character, and his companion Tess have been charged with smuggling this girl named Ellie. Um, they're doing so because they're trying to get back their guns, quote unquote, their guns, um, from the leader of this faction called the Fireflies. The leader is named Marlene, and she basically gave them an ultimatum of they can get their guns back by transporting some cargo for her, and if they do so successfully, they can get their guns. Um, and I think she also says that she'll sweeten the deal a little bit. She doesn't disclose what the cargo is. She just keeps saying that she'll show them. So she does that, and we get to this little warehouse where we find Ellie. And it turns out that we're smuggling Ellie out of the city to the Capitol building, or at least out of the safe zone of the city. Um, Tess and Joel are a little cautious about this at first, but they really want to get their guns, so they ended up agreeing. Um, so they end up traveling outside of the city walls, um, and they get pretty early on caught by these Fedra officers. Fedra is this government military organization in the game who claim that they just want to keep the people safe and keep them away from infected, but they end up really being like a very tyrannical force and a not a positive presence in the game. So early on, it's disclosed that we don't really like these characters. Um, so they get caught by two of these Fedra officers, and they do a standard procedure where they make the characters kneel and get scanned to see if they are infected. Um, and so they go down the line. They scan Tess, then they scan Joel, and then they get to Ellie, and Ellie is very um, like visually skittish as she's getting scanned, and before the officer can see the results, she stabs him in the leg, and Joel and Tess kill the two Fedra officers. Um, Tess ends up checking the scanner, and it turns out that Ellie scanned positive, meaning she's infected. So Joel and Tess become very, very agitated and angry, and they think that Marlene set them up. Um, and then Ellie claims that she got bit 3 weeks ago. Tess says that that's impossible because people always turn within 2 days. Um, Ellie says that that's the point, and that the Fireflies think that they can make a cure from her blood, and that's the reason that they're smuggling her. Um, Tess and Joel don't really believe that, or at least they don't believe that she could be the answer to a cure, but they're too far in at this point to turn back, especially because, you know, Tess ended up shooting the officers, and so the other officers got tipped off because of the gunshots, and then they end up finding the two dead Fedra officers. So the three get chased for a few sequences until they get cornered in this subway station that is now full of zombies. And so we, the player, are tasked with getting Tess and Ellie across this room um, to the surface and to essentially freedom. Um, and I chose this section of the game for a few reasons. The main one being that whenever I think about this game and like the early parts of this game, I always think back to this part first. And I think that that's because it's the first time the game is really like letting us, the player, like they're letting go of our hand and telling us, we've given you these tools. They're at your disposal. So now you have to figure out how you're gonna navigate the rest of the game. Um, and to my knowledge, yeah, this is the first time that this happens because before this, it's mostly a bunch of encounters, what I call like tutorial levels, where the game is just showing you like how to shoot, how to heal. Um, it introduces melee weapons early on. It shows you the listening mechanic, that I'll talk about later on too. Um, which, funny enough, I actually had turned off in the menus, which I didn't know you could even do. I was doing a grounded playthrough, and I guess I was trying to do like a really grounded playthrough and try to go through it without listening. So I was getting really frustrated just going through it, just like not knowing where the enemies were. Um, but I turned it back on, so we're gonna talk about that a little bit early or a little bit later. But for now, um, I'm gonna start playing. And another thing that I really like about this game is that it establishes early on that you can either approach it from a stealth perspective or like a guns blazing perspective. It's really up to you. I do a combination of both. I'll try to stealth it out for as long as I can until I get discovered by an enemy. Then I just go guns blazing for the rest of the level. Um, but that's up to you, and I think that's a really cool choice that the game gives you. So. So something I want to talk about really quickly. It didn't really happen there, or it might have to a certain degree, but um, the enemy that I just took down is called a clicker, which is just this infected zombie that has become infected for so long that it began growing fungus out of its head, and it's gotten in the way of its vision. So clickers can't see, like they have no sense of sight, um, and they rely on their hearing. Um, and so, along with that, they're also super strong. Like if a clicker gets a hold of you, it's especially early on in the game, it's game over. Um, they're not. There's really no way to get out of it. Um, and something that usually happens, or at least that I've figured out playing this game so much, is that you're supposed to sneak up very like quietly, um, on these clickers. Either that or you just avoid them altogether. But I figured out a way that like there's a certain window where you can sneak up behind them but then just full on go, like the way I'm walking right now. You can just go and shiv them, because there's a window where even if the clicker turns around fully, you can still shiv them, but it won't be like you're shivving them from the front. The game will just pretend that you caught them from behind and you shiv them from behind like you normally would. And that's something that slightly bothers me about the game, is that these clickers are supposed to be this really threatening presence, which they still are, but the fact that there's ways to sort of cheese them in this way makes them just a little bit less scary to me, and just kind of takes me out of the immersion just a little bit in the game. But you know, it's just one thing so far.
Too fucking creepy.
Okay, so real quick, another thing I wanted to talk about, um, and it just happened right there, is I really like how many different ways your playthroughs can go in this game. Um, like that whole sequence right there where me and Tess shot the two clickers and I used my Molotov. I've never done it that way. That's not how I wanted that to go at all. Um, I didn't mean for the first runner to see me. I thought I had the timing right to where I could sneak up behind a vending machine and then stealth kill him. But I didn't, so I had to melee him, and that alerted the clickers around me. And I had to, you know, it's changed the dynamic of the rest of my encounter. Um, and I think that's really interesting because, like I was, or like I always have this methodical way of going through games like this, games that I've played so much. Um, but the game still manages to throw curveballs at me, um, to where I can have a different experience every time I play it, and I think that's really cool. It's one of the reasons I really like this game.
This way. We're almost out of this. Come on. Shit.
Help me with this fucking thing.
Okay, so like I was saying earlier, I usually have methodical patterns that I do in this game. I guess I haven't played this game in a while, and it's showing. I didn't mean for that to go like that at all. But again, I think that's okay because the game is sort of forcing me to figure out how to navigate it. And I think that just really shows the replayability of the game. Um, so yeah, so let's try again. We're gonna get through it. Okay, so I may be wrong, but in the case that I'm not, I'd also like to talk about another mechanic, or I guess just like ludonarrative weird aspect of this game. And it's in a lot of games also, so it's not like to the fault of these creators, honestly. But usually, when you kill all the enemies in an encounter, the other characters will say some quippy line like, "Wow, that was hard. Wow, we got through that. Whatever." And I didn't hear that just now, so I was getting ready to sprint because I thought I'd killed all of them, all the enemies in the level, but I didn't hear that sound bit, so I went back to crouched and I think that's just an interesting uh, common like sort of trope in games. Like I've seen it on TikTok as well. It's a meme that you know when you're done with the level when you can't sprint anymore or the characters give a soundbite like that. Okay, so it turns out that we had killed all the enemies. Yeah, that's really what I wanted to play for this Let's Play assignment. Just to wrap up on a few things, and some things I actually didn't get to. There's like some other like narrative immersion things that sort of uh, irk me about this game. It probably happened a few times in this encounter just now, but the way companions can move around encounters, the way I can't, at least without drawing attention to myself. Like a lot of the times, um, I'll have to like slowly navigate around an enemy, especially like a clicker, um, and that'll end up getting me like far from Ellie or Tess. And the way the game is coded, um, they have to be like as close to me as possible, basically at all times. So, um, in order for that to happen, the companions just have to have the ability to just sprint past enemies the way I can't. And that's sort of something that's taken me out of the experience a little bit before, just because, especially when it comes to Ellie as a character, even early on in this game, in the game, where they don't have this bond yet as like a father-daughter dynamic, but it's like it still disrupts the immersion later on when it's like that as well. But even early on in the game, where they don't have that bond, Ellie is still cargo to Joel. Ellie is um, like a means to an end, and so for especially Tess, who is near Ellie, to not be like to not have a sound bit where she's like, Ellie, slow down, Ellie, don't run. Um, where in fact she runs alongside Ellie. It sort of takes me out of the immersion a bit. It doesn't ruin the game for me. It's still probably my favorite game. Um, but it's just something to critique. It's something I think it just speaks to how um, really no game is perfect, and that it's okay to have little gripes about your favorite games. Also, I wanted to touch again, just for one more time, on the agency you have in games like this. Even very like narrative strict narrative based single player games, where you don't have a choice in what happens in the story, but you have a choice in how you navigate the game. It I really like games like that because for me it's the best of both worlds. I get to be in control. I get to have a lot of agency throughout the game, and then I also get to hopefully um, experience a good story like I do in this game. Um, so I think that's a really cool aspect of this game, and I think that that's touched on even further in the second game. Um, so yeah, that's been my Let's Play of The Last of Us. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for watching.